Nothing like a cold beer at the end of a long day.
You know what? We have Denmark to thank for this.
Denmark didn't invent beer.
No, I know, but this delicious, tasty Danish lager is because of an amazing discovery here in Denmark.
Okay, tell me more.
So, back in the 1800s, there was a major issue with brewing beer called beer sickness. Basically, what it meant was that they had no idea what batch was going to be good or bad because of impurities with the yeast. So, here at Carlsberg, they were able to isolate the specific brewing yeast. It was actually done by Emil Christian Hansen, and he was able to isolate the brewing yeast so that they could make sure that they had a pure yeast to use in every single batch to make sure it's of high quality. Other interesting fact with it is that when it was discovered, this was something that Carlsberg decided not to patent or keep as intellectual property, but instead share with brewers around the world.
Well, that was kind of him.
Well, it was a business decision, a little bit of altruism, but he wanted to make sure that beer was considered to be of high quality as compared to other things like spirits. And so by having it so that every brewer was able to have good beer, it meant that everyone was going to be on the same page and the entire industry would be good.
High tide raises all ships.
Exactly.
Now, one Danish invention that I didn't know about the beer, is the Lego. I think everybody should at least know that the Danes invented the Lego, and it was the famous Ole Kirk Christensen, who had a toy factory that created the Lego bricks. At that time, they primarily made wooden toys in his shop, but these automatic binding bricks were his invention, Legos. The first ones weren't quite as reliable at sticking together, but he was able to perfect into the plastic composition that we have today and that we all know and love. That took about 9 years. So in 1958, they came out with the famous brick that we know of today, but thanks to a commitment to quality, the original bricks from before 1958 actually fit with the ones that come right out of the factory today. Pretty cool.
It's awesome. I love Legos. Now, speaking of fun and games, one sport that was invented here in Denmark is handball.
That's why they're so good at it.
That's why they're so good at it. It helps when you invented the game. Now, of course, games where people are throwing balls at nets and things like that date back to the ancient Greeks. You can see ancient Greek vases that show depictions of various games like this. But the handball that we know today first had its rules written down by Holger Nielsen in 1906. So this is when the first rules of handball were put together. Modern game evolved a little bit over the next decade, but essentially that's where the rules of handball come from. And now it allows us to say that the reigning world champs happen to be the country that invented the sport.
How nice. Okay, so on a warm Copenhagen summer day when I'm sitting on Islandsbrygge and a bunch of Danish teenagers come up and start blasting music, I don't always appreciate it as much, but I do have to appreciate that the invention of the loudspeaker actually comes from a Dane. It was Peter Jensen and his business partner Edwin Priedom who developed the first usable moving coil or dynamic loudspeaker back in 1915. And they sold it under the name of Magnavox, which maybe you've heard of. So the first Magnavox speakers were used for public addresses, and it actually revolutionized speeches, and it's led to basically what we know as a loudspeaker today.
That's fantastic. So now we know loudspeakers, Danish. So you have the loudspeaker to play the music, but before that you got to have somewhere to record it in the first place, right?
Okay, yeah.
That's a Danish invention too. You may never have heard of it before, but it's the telegraphone.
Oh, that Lady Gaga song.
No, telegraphone.
Oh.
So what this is, it's actually the forerunner to the modern tape recorder. So in 1898, Valdemar Poulsen invented a method for recording sounds on a magnetic wire. This method was first shown publicly at the 1900 World's Fair in Paris, where actually the Austrian Emperor Franz Joseph was recorded, and it's believed this is the oldest surviving magnetic audio recording. He was also a pioneer in the radio broadcasting industry as he invented something called the Poulsen arc transmitter in 1908. Okay. And this was actually how radio broadcasts were done until the 1920s when vacuum tubes were invented and made it a lot easier. You can see the picture of it. It's this giant contraption that he made. So it seems like Poulsen was a little bit of a forerunner in everything that came through. We don't use his inventions anymore today, but he laid the foundation for the inventions we know now for magnetic tape recording, like a little tape cassette, and radio broadcasts.
So we stand on the shoulders of Danish giants.
There we go. That's what we do.
Very cool. Okay, well, another invention that is maybe a bit older is the dry cell battery. So that one was actually invented by a Dane too. Many people have advanced battery technology over the years, but basically in the means of trying to make it easier and easier to store electricity, right? So in 1887, Frederick Louis Wilhelm Hellesen developed a new dry cell battery that actually made it much easier to transport. So his first customers were the Danish telephone company and made it possible for them to store electricity and transport it.
Nice. Good little invention.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to bore you with this one. Am I driving you up a wall? But we have to mention Niels Bohr. I mean, here we have one of the greatest physicists that ever lived, and he lived, worked, and is actually still buried here in Copenhagen.
Okay.
Niels Bohr won the Nobel Prize in 1922 for his services in the investigation of the structure of atoms and the radiation emanating from them. Ooh, weighty stuff. Basically, he discovered our somewhat modern knowledge of what the atom looks like. He was able to discover that the atom had a dense nucleus and orbiting electrons, and most importantly, they operate at various energy levels. So with this, a lot of the foundations of modern physics come from this. Obviously, we've learned more about the nature of the atom over time, but this is the foundation that still rings true today. Also, at the same time that he was going through this, and Niels Bohr also had the prediction that the 72nd element had to exist somewhere. In 1923, some of his lab mates actually discovered it here in Copenhagen. So again, not an invention, but another amazing discovery happening here just around the corner at Copenhagen University. The element is known as hafnium, and that's because the name of Copenhagen in Latin is Hafnia. So it's named in honor of the city of Copenhagen.
So it's Copenhagenium.
Basically, but in a
Copenhagenium,
yeah, in a very Latinized way.
Okay. Well, now I know.
Now you know.
And if you want to know more things now about Denmark, you can click on the video right in front of me, watch one of our first big hits on YouTube that we still love to watch today called 14 Things You Didn't Know About Denmark. And if you want to learn more about Danish history, you can watch the video in front of Mike and learn about why Denmark exists because of the birth certificate of Denmark at Jelling. So you can watch this video when we visited the Jelling Stones. Thanks a lot for watching, guys.
Hi.